burnout for you. There we go. There's the recording.
Sorry.
Um,
First
yeah.
time webinar.
So just a little bit about me before we get started. So like Donna was saying, I am part of the Shugart family. My grandpa and grandma are Doyle and Maud Ann Shugart. I essentially grew up in the family business. I got the pleasure and experience of working a little bit with my grandpa, which I'm very, very thankful for now looking back. Working also with my grandmother, who still works to this day, maybe even longer hours than I work. She is very dedicated to the profession still. Working with my dad, my Uncle Kyle, and Donna, I've really had the pleasure of working with people who just have a wealth of knowledge. So everything that I know about the industry is, credit because of them and the knowledge and the hard work that they've put into the profession. Grew up working in the summers. It's, 14, 15 with my dad at the cemetery doing landscaping and spreading mulch, all the fun things that a 15-year-old loves to do during the summer. But I really did enjoy it because it's where my dad worked, and I thought it was really cool that we owned our own business and that we were helping people at such a critical time in their lives of losing a pet. Now I work as a therapist in Swanee, Georgia, at a private practice called Thrive Forward Therapy. So I've now fully over there, but I still love to stay plugged in and connected to this profession just because it means so much to me and such a huge part of my family and growing up that I always have a place in my heart for people who are going through the loss of their pet and how this profession meets people there at such a critical time. I currently host a pet loss support group with Deceased Pet Care twice a month. And I also see people in my private practice as well for pet loss grief. Have a couple clients dealing with that and just helping them along their grief journey. This picture is with my wife, Ashley. We got married last July. We actually have a baby on the way. He's due in actually just a few weeks. So he's not pictured yet. Maybe the next presentation. So I had qualifications. Donna kind of went through all this, but got my master's and doctorate at Mercer University over clinical mental health counseling. I'm now a licensed professional counselor, nationally certified. But I think what makes me maybe the biggest qualification is I've had the experience of owning pets and having pets throughout my life. A lot of the reason why we get into this industry and this profession is because we love animals and we love helping people go through a very difficult time in their lives. So I firsthand know what it's like to lose a pet and all the feelings that come with that. And also working in the industry and all the feelings that come with that. So that's just a little bit about me. So during this presentation, we're going to be going over exactly what burnout is. Now, this will be a very broad overview, but I hope that when you walk away from this, that you'll have some tips and tools that you can use to help combat any stress, specifically in this profession, but also something to maybe give down to your employees or managers as well. We'll actually be going over burnout and other topics at the conference this year as well, where we're going to go a lot more in depth. So if you haven't signed up for that, you can go ahead and do that. I'll be there in Boston this year, going over a few presentations. So for today, what is burnout? So burnout is a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So it's characterized by three dimensions. The first one is feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion. So what happens here is really a mental and physical fatigue. So it feels difficult to even want to get up and go to work at this point. Even if you had a good night of sleep, the idea of going to work just feels exhausting. Increased mental distance from one's job or feelings of negativity or cynicism related to one's job. So this is a big one that I often see. So there's really a distancing happening here. So typically, someone who's experiencing burnout, they're really wanting to separate themselves from the thing that's causing them the distress, and the distress may be that job. So a person may want to mentally remove themselves from the job as much as possible. So maybe, when they're talking about the job, they're talking about it in a very negative way. They've lost any kind of joy or passion that they once had about the job, or what it is that they do for work. So that's just sort of gone. They're wanting to distance themselves from the thing that's causing them this distress and these negative feelings. Reduced professional efficacy. So, obviously, when these things are happening, it can lead to impacting a person's work performance. Which is obviously a big thing in the field is work performance and quality of work. But it feels difficult for them to be there. They don't maybe even want to be there. They view their work as negative, and all of that kind of bleeds into the job. So you may see a reduction in an employee's work performance, or maybe even their work quality. There we go. Yeah. So burnout occurs when a person has negative feelings about work over a long period of time that can lead to fatigue, irritability, and physical complaints. So a feeling of burnout continues to build again over time. So it's not necessarily something that happens, in one day, but maybe over weeks, over months, and potentially over years. So, like I was talking about on the previous slide, it's the buildup that happens. So, these negative feelings about work for a long time that will eventually lead to symptoms that affect someone emotionally and physically. It's also the result of frustration, powerlessness, and inability to achieve work goals. So, not only are you experiencing all these symptoms, but there's a piece of you that happens where you feel like there's no control in the situation. So it's this idea that I'm in this situation and nothing can be done about it. This is how the job is. It's not going to change no matter what I do. And I may even feel like there's nothing I could do to begin with, that it's always going to be this way. And now this is just sort of miserable. And that's just kind of what it looks like. There's a lot of common factors that lead to burnout, which is important to go over because burnout doesn't sound that great. So we want to figure out, well, how does someone get to a point of being burnout? One of the biggest factors is work overload. Um, kind of giving you some specific examples here, but being mindful of the hours your employees are working. So if you're an owner or a manager, what kind of hours are some of your employees working? So at Deceased Pet Care, we had, I feel like at least most companies have at least one person, right, who's willing to go above and beyond, and it's just, give me all the work that you can. And as owners and managers, it's like, well, that's awesome because there's a lot of work to be done. So at Deceased Pet Care, we had one employee who he wanted to work as much as we could absolutely give him. And again, that was music to our ears of, wow, someone wants to work as much as they can. And there's always work to be done. So that's awesome. So we did. But there came a time when we started to realize, okay, that's not really sustainable for him, actually. We can, even if he didn't see it, we were starting to see, okay, this is affecting quality a little bit here, and it's just not sustainable. We're starting to see things um, that this is going down a path where things might not continue to go well. So we had to scale back on that. And sometimes that's a decision that you have to make, whether the employee sees that or not. But maybe there's certain things that you can see as an owner or manager that, okay, this is starting to affect you a bit too much. Poor working hours. One example may be like night shifts or something to be watchful of. If you're an organization that has night shifts, so a lot of times you may only have one person working the night shift. So it can definitely get lonely. There's no really interaction with other people, and maybe they like that. Maybe that's why they chose the night shift. But I would still check in on them. You know, let them know that they're still part of the bigger team here. They're still part of the bigger purpose of what it is that we do, even if their role is completely different than what their coworkers' role is. So if snacks or lunches are part of the day shift, include them in the night shift as well. You want to kind of treat each shift equally, because sometimes what can happen is the night shift feels like they're not appreciated or not getting the same things that the day shift gets. That leads to resentment and having negative feelings about one's job. Um, and I would also ensure that day shift is doing their fair share of the work. So the night shift doesn't really become the scapegoat. A lot of times, if employees know that there's a night shift, well, we couldn't get this load on today for cremation, and the night shift will take care of it. Sometimes those things can build up, and then all of a sudden, your night shift workers kind of being overworked, and that can lead to some issues. Poor or lack of support from management or coworkers. So right here is really check-ins. I think one of the most important things you can do as an owner or as a manager is to check in on everyone. This doesn't mean you have to babysit or micromanage, but if employees are not getting the support that they need, there will be problems ahead, and burnout can always just be right around the corner. Ambiguity and role conflict. So this is where clearly defined roles can be really helpful. And it's also good for employees to know the roles of their coworkers, what it is that each department does or contributes. Sometimes blame can be cast from one department to another if they think, well, this department dropped the ball and that's why we're having to deal with the issues that we are. But a lot of times it's actually not that department, it's something totally outside of their control. But if each department doesn't know what the other is doing, then there can be a lot of mixed messages and a lot of confusion and a lot of resentment can start to build up. I saw that even in our own company at times where we kind of had to not only better clearly define each person's role, but also give them an understanding of, hey, this department does all these things. Even if you think that, well, maybe they just sit around all day and don't do much, actually, here's a whole list of all the things that they do. Um, so it can just kind of provide a lot of insight and clarity to them to avoid those situations from happening. But I think it's also important to have an underlying tone of, at disease pet care was whatever it takes, you know. So even as you have these defined roles and job descriptions, at the end of the day, everybody needs to help everybody, right? It's a very team oriented profession because um, each department is just as important as the next. So if you have that team mentality, then the quality is going to be there, and uh, the employees, are going to feel much happier at their work because it's not just all on them, but they have other people that they can depend on, that they can lean on. Um, Lack of autonomy and influence at work. So micromanaging can really turn people away. I know some managers or employees can be, they want to know every single detail about every single thing happening. But sometimes that can take away a person's autonomy of what their job is, you know. So I would say trust your employees, allow them to handle some of the problems that do come, because it sort of gives them further purpose in their job of, hey, my manager or my owner, they trust me to do the job that they've given me, right? So there's this trust that we've built, and also I have some autonomy over my job. It's not just my boss telling me, you do this, don't do that, but I already kind of know what to do, and I've taken some ownership and leadership in that, and now I have some influence at work, right? Where it's not just I'm just another cog in the machine, so to speak. So this builds trust, and again allows them to build influence while at work, which is huge. So how does burnout affect us, and in what ways? One is energy, mental and physical exhaustion. So, even after um, uh, a good night's sleep, if you had one, you're still kind of waking up feeling exhausted, like you really don't have much energy. And it can also affect your sleep. So maybe there's difficulty falling asleep. There's difficulty staying asleep. So maybe you fall asleep and then wake up 5, 6 times during the night. Or maybe you fall asleep and it's extremely difficult to even want to get out of bed and go to work the next day. It's just kind of this daunting heaviness that weighs on you. Here we go, another Monday, another Tuesday. I have to be there for 8, 9, 10 hours. Just these negative feelings that are happening. Physical symptoms, headaches, body tension, body aches. It really can affect you physically, which makes sense, right? If I'm already mentally so drained and so mentally worn out, that's eventually going to affect my body, how my body reacts to that. It may affect a person's gut health, even. So there's a lot that can go with that. Um, Relationships can affect relationships with spouses, family, friends, coworkers. When you come home from a long day of work, it's I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to check in with my spouse. I want to sit on the TV or sit on the couch, watch TV, and just zone out. Right. I don't really want to interact with people much anymore. I don't want to go out to dinner. It's just kind of this heaviness of so many negative feelings about my job, but feeling stuck, feeling burnout, and now it's affecting the relationships around me at home, my personal relationships. Can affect mood, anywhere from irritability, getting um, angry or frustrated or annoyed at coworkers, at your boss, at the lady at the store, or when you go on a lunch break. It can really just affect your mood, and that mood can um, other people feel that, other people sense that. A lot of quick to react to things. So maybe you were someone who was once patient, and now you have a very short fuse. So it can really just affect all of these things, and before you know it, um, just not in a great place. Continuing with that, it also affects a lot of our work, and these are really important pieces because you as an owner or manager, this is how it can affect your employees and how it can affect their work performance. So, production and performance. This is kind of where you as an owner or manager will start to notice some things. So maybe it can affect their job effectiveness. You might see a decrease in productivity or lack of motivation from them or lack of quality in the work that they're doing. So maybe they were, um, with the cremation, they were one of your best cremation guys. And now all of a sudden, not as reliable, making small mistakes that they never used to make. but you're starting to notice that the employee that was once on top of everything, but now there's been a change. There's been a shift in work performance, quality of work. So job dissatisfaction. They feel dissatisfied with what they're doing. And I think on a deeper level, they're just not fulfilled anymore. They've kind of lost that purpose and that why of being at that job or the role that they're in. They just have lost their lost what did satisfy them, and the job is just no longer there. Negative feelings. Again, I've talked about this before, but they may say things like, I don't care about this job anymore. Like, I hate the role that I'm in. I wish I could do anything else. I'm over this. I'm done. You know, one more week is all I have. I don't know if I can do another day. Right? When you start to hear this language in your employees, you know that likely something is going on, potentially burnout. Right? But there is an issue there that needs to be addressed immediately. Detachment. Um, so I kind of spoke about this earlier, but it's really this idea that when we feel burned out from a job, the last thing we want to do is just be at the job. But since we have responsibilities, we have bills to pay, I have to go to work, right? But sometimes what can happen is we try to mentally detach ourselves from the thing that's causing distress. So, okay, I'm going to go to work, but I'm going to be checked out. I'm going to go to work, but I'm not going to be nice to anybody that I interact with. I'm going to go to work. In fact, I'm not even going to talk at all. I'm just going to go through the motions, because the more that I can detach or almost kind of dissociate myself away from the job, maybe the better it is that I'll feel, right? Which may or may not work for them, probably won't in the long term, but it's also not going to work really well for your company's culture and your company's culture that you're trying to cultivate, and the other employees are taking notice of that. Something's going on with Joe. He's not the same anymore, doesn't interact, seems like he hates everybody now, doesn't even seem like he enjoys doing his job anymore. So you'll start to see that detachment starting. So preventing burnout. What are some of the things that we can do to prevent this from ever happening? One of the bigger things I would say is setting boundaries. Um, Setting boundaries, especially as an owner or a manager, can be really difficult because much of our life is revolved around our business, our work. Um, and I totally get it. I grew up in a family business, and the older I got, being over one of our facilities, I always had my phone on me. I was also one of the on call guys, so I would work throughout the week. But even weeknights, I'd take a few nights a week between me and my brothers, be on call. The weekend came, be on call, maybe make some extra money, right? Um, but the problem is, wow, my phone, I'm always checking my phone, always checking my email. It's like I can't really get away. Like, I leave work, but not really, you know? Um, but I would just say, remember, if you don't set boundaries for your work and your personal life, no one else is going to do that for you. So I work with a lot of couples in post-affair work. So maybe there's been some type of betrayal or cheating. And one of the first things that we go over is setting boundaries for their marriage. What are the things that you're going to do to keep your marriage safe and secure? How are you going to protect your marriage? And one of the things I say is, if you don't set these boundaries, if you don't do things to protect your marriage, no one's going to do that for you, right? So it's the same thing with work. If there's no boundaries set, no one's going to do that for you. So it is totally up to you. Um, and one question that you might want to ask yourself is, as you try to navigate boundaries, um, is what would be the consequences if you didn't set that boundary? You know, what would happen if, um, I didn't set the boundary of turning my phone off at some point at night? Well, it might affect even my marriage. The wife isn't happy because I'm always on the phone. It might affect other relationships. Um, so I think defining specific work hours as much as you can. And I know that's tough just because of today's world, being an American and just work, work, work. I get it. I've been there. I'm still there at some point. Um, but maybe avoiding checking texts, calls, emails outside of work hours. So essentially having a stopping point. So maybe as an owner or manager, your stopping point is obviously probably not 5 p.m. But is it 7 p.m.? Is it 9 p.m.? Even if it's 11 p.m., have a stopping point somewhere. Because if you don't, your mind is always going to be at work to some degree. And over time, yeah, that might work for a little bit. Maybe it's even worked for you for years. But at some point, it's going to be a bit too much for you. And it may be a bit too much for the other people around you in the relationships. Time management. So procrastination, stay on top of things. Um, the more behind we feel, stress increases. If stress levels stay high for very long periods of time, burnout is really just around the corner. Staying organized and working efficiently is better than disorganization and working for longer. So, really trying to organize the tasks that you do have to do for the day and not procrastinating can really make things feel more manageable. I'm big on routines. When I'm out of my routine, it's not good. So I really do love routine. Figure out what works for you during the workday. What things during your day need to be set as routines that, again, can make life less stressful and more manageable. Learn to say no. This is a really big one, um, because we want to say yes to every pet owner request or every veterinary clinic need, right? Um, the vet clinic is calling at 2 a.m. for us to come pick up a pet, and okay, that's about an hour drive and an hour back, and it's at some point, um, we might need to learn to say no to some things, or at the very least, a yes with maybe a healthy time frame. So I can't make it out tonight, but first thing in the morning. Um, Overcommitment will eventually lead to really spreading yourself thin. Um, that will not only lead to a lesser quality of service, but I think also a lesser quality of life, because we can really only sustain that for so long, until burnout starts to come into the picture. And again, maybe you're seeing all these things and saying, well, it's worked for me so far. That's how I got here, right? Which is fine, right? I'm not saying there's not hard work, or sacrifices to be made in this profession or with any job. All I'm saying is being mindful of these things because at some point it does catch up, right? Even if it's not you individually, other people around you it may affect, especially when it comes to personal relationships. Prioritize the yes. So saying no to certain things will also kind of open the door to allow you to say yes to the really, really important things that come up, right? But if you're saying yes to everything, when that important thing does come up, it feels a lot heavier at that point. Creating a supportive work environment. So, do your employees feel valued? Um, People that don't feel valued for what they bring to a company tend to not stick around for very long. This can lead to high levels of turnover for your business, which is only going to bring you more stress, as an owner or manager. I remember manager at the Chambly location, one of the biggest stressors was, if we had a bad turnover year, right? Where we lost one or two people. That was a big deal because hiring is a challenge in of itself, right? So that's going to take more of my time, more of finding the right person who's going to be there long term. So if people don't feel valued, they tend to not stick around for very long. They go to places where they feel valued, right? Are they recognized for their hard work? You is there recognition for the things that they do during the day, during the week, during the month, that for that year, even? Are they fulfilled in their role or department? Um, within reason, is there anything, maybe even asking them, is there anything that would bring them more fulfillment in their job, when they're doing their check-ins? So maybe for them, they've worked in a department for years and, they just, they've been there a long time and they kind of want some change. Would they be happier if they went to a different department and got some of that change, saw sort of some new scenery, right? Um, is there anything where you can meet them kind of halfway at that point? Identify issues early. So do a self check-in every now and then. Ask questions like, "How am I feeling? How have my stress levels been this week? How am I doing right now? What do I need?" Um, a lot of times, that's a hard question. Especially as business owners, of thinking about yourself and what you need. But we have to do that. You have to check in with yourself. How am I doing? Where are my stress levels at? How am I feeling this week? What are some things I need to do to decompress, to kind of check out, even if it's for a few hours? Seek support and help. Um, so let trusted close ones that let them in on what's going on with you. Don't hide it. I think a lot of times, a lot of the reasons why burnout and these things continue to spiral is because we don't tell anybody until maybe we're already at rock bottom. But the more preventative you can be about it, doesn't necessarily have to go down that spiral. Healthy habits. One of the first things that I work on with people in my private practice of they've been experiencing like anywhere from like burnout, depression, anxiety, is I take a look at their sleep, their diet, and their exercise. So you'd be surprised at how much those things are put on the back burner. I'm sure as an owner, as a manager, sometimes I didn't get much sleep this week. I haven't got much sleep in the past 6 months. Right, my diet, it's fast food. I'd skip breakfast. I got some chips for lunch, and kind of forgot about dinner, right, or exercise even. Um, or how many steps are we getting in a day? Are we just sitting in our office for 9 hours straight? What does that look like? So I really try to address those things because they sound very simple and foundational, and that's because they are. But if we're not doing those things, then that's going to set you up for some potential negative outcomes, whether that's more stress, maybe even more anxiety, um, feelings of depression potentially, and definitely burnout. So self care. So this is really something gives you um, that gives you life, or that fills your cup up, right? So this may be quality time with somebody you enjoy spending time with, outdoors, reading, connecting with others, exercise. Um, you know, Self care is a very big word in mental health nowadays. It's kind of become mainstream. Um, but really trying to figure out what is self care for you, right? I don't necessarily think self care is, well, I'm just going to watch Netflix for 10 hours and that's my self care. It's like, maybe, right? But maybe 2 hours of Netflix and then, going to grab dinner with someone, like a friend or a spouse, right? Or maybe it's getting outdoors and going for a run. But whatever it is, you walk away from that thing saying, I feel more fulfilled now. I feel a little bit more satisfied in life. Mindfulness techniques, that this is really just being mindful of how you're feeling, kind of like a check-in with yourself, right? What is sometimes hard to do because so much of our week, there's other people demanding things from us, right? Of, well, hey, this assignment's got to be done, this deadline, this project, I need, I need this done, I need that. There's a lot of people pulling in different directions, of yourself. But so being mindful to take time to, okay, how am I feeling? How am I doing? Is there anything again that I need? Right. Just almost wrapping up here. Want to make sure we have some time for Q&A too. So check in with your employees. So is there a need not being met? Simple check-ins go a long way. Team meetings, I'll go a little bit more detail on the next slide, but incorporating team meetings can really keep the communication open for when concerns do arise. Appreciation and acknowledgement. Again, employees want to feel appreciated, they want to be acknowledged, they want to feel valued. So no matter who you are, those are the things that you really kind of look for in a job, right? Do I feel valued here? Now, some employees, may need it more than others, or may need it in different ways. So, what works for one employee maybe doesn't work for another. And that comes in with getting to know your employees. Getting to know the people who work for you. And I think through that you'll discover what it is that they do need. Reviews can be really helpful check-ins as well. What's working, what's not, acknowledging the work that they've done and the success that they've helped bring to the business. It should give you a lot of insight into burnout levels as well. Like, how's their body language? How are they talking about their job? How are they talking to me, maybe as an owner or manager? Do things feel a little bit off, right? But the earlier you can catch it, the earlier you can help them with whatever it is that they're needing as well. Here's some just kind of tips and tools. Some ideas that we've kind of used in our own company, Deceased Pet Care, and just some things that I've heard from some other organizations as well. Catered lunches. So this can kind of really help change up the daily routine of things. Everyone loves free food. Um, so, but it's also a chance to change up their day, right? And a small token of appreciation for the hard work that they do perform, every week, right? Cross training in different departments. So a lot of times when people reach burnout, one of the factors might be from doing the same thing every single day. So there's no change. It's routine all the time, which a large part of routine is good, right? But it's also good to change things up every now and then, to be challenged in performing in another department. So it kind of changes the scenery. It can help keep things fresh, maybe. Um, it also helps things feel more team oriented because there's no more, well, I don't know how to do that, or that's not really my job. Instead, it's, hey, John, can you help with this paw print? We just can't really get it right, but, we know you're pretty good at these too. Or, hey, John, I know you've been processing, for a month straight. Why don't you let me do that today? And you can be a driver for the day, right? And honestly, it also kind of helps you out as a owner and manager because your employees kind of know how to do it all in a sense. And again, you don't want to overwork them in that area, but that can really kind of bring some change to their day, rather than doing the same thing every single day for months, for years. I know some companies do like employee of the month with incentives. It's usually voted on by employees. Um, so this can be sort of a neat thing. Maybe like an extra $100 in their check for the month. Maybe get them a gift card for dinner for two somewhere. And it's voted on by their peers because It also helps them to feel appreciated by their coworkers, people that they work with every single day. Daily huddles and team meetings with feedback. So this is where you can gauge where people are at, how are they doing, how's their department doing, what's the good that's happening, what are some things that maybe need adjusting. Going weeks or months without these things can lead to bigger problems down the road, because that's when there's so much in between time, um, you know, uh, or when there's so much in between time, um, in between check-ins, a lot can happen, right? So you don't want too much to happen kind of in between those times. Peer support system. So being able to have a peer in the workplace, when you can debrief about things um, that happen, can be really helpful. So a lot of times it can be difficult for loved ones or close relationships to really understand what it is that we go through on a day-to-day basis in this profession. Um, but to have someone in the workplace to be able to just vent, or to kind of help bring support and maybe even some team bonding, to go through those not so positive experiences. So being able to find somebody within your company, that's appropriate, that, hey, can I just vent about this for 5 minutes? This really tough thing just happened, with one of our clients. Um, Massage chair, as odd as that sounds. I know some companies actually who do have that, and they sound like a silly thing. At Thrive Forward, the owner of the practice, she actually brought in a masseuse for, I think it was a few hours, and we each got to have a like back and shoulder massage for like 20 minutes. And at first, I was thinking, that's different. But after the massage, it was, wow, I wish we could do that once a week. That would be awesome. So even things that kind of sound silly, you'd be surprised at how much people enjoy those things. And again, it just kind of, it's a acknowledgement, appreciation for what they do, and it just kind of changes up the day and the week every now and then. Appreciation to employees. Some companies will do like yearly outings. I know we would do like a one, Braves baseball game a year for the whole team, um, whole company, um, or maybe it's going to a nice dinner somewhere, where they can bring, their spouses, or their kids, their families. Yes, it's a commitment as an owner, but being able to have those things can help people feel like they're more than just a cog in a machine, right? That you value them, you appreciate the work that they do, and with that, there's more purpose in what they are doing, right? They're not just going to a job, but that's their career. That's what they really enjoy doing, and they love the people that they're surrounded by and the people that they work for. Um, yeah, so the company, again, is interested in them, right? It's not just a, well, thanks for the job that you do, see you next week, right? But what are some innovative ways where we can really let our team know we appreciate you being here, we appreciate the hard work you put in, right? All those things can hopefully help some of the burnout that could potentially happen down the road. Awesome. Just under an hour. Anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask? Donna,
I
you can.
Yes, we did have one question. Nancy was asking, if you provide 24-hour service as a business, how would you recommend setting boundaries
Mhm.
for that?
Yeah.
Um,
So I would say, I'm assuming, Nancy, when you say 24-hour service, um, so I'll just kind of take it like how we did it at Deceased Pet Care. Um, so like I mentioned earlier, me and my brothers, we would do on call, right? Um, and this is something my grandpa started when he started the business. He was going out to 3, 4 a.m. I still remember at times my dad getting up, and he's told me stories about this, when they had to be on call, getting up at 2 a.m. to drive to Duluth and pick up a pet at somebody's home because they had passed. So for a long while, me and my brothers essentially did the same thing. However, what we did is we set a cutoff time, because we enjoyed sleep as well. So generally speaking, it was maybe 11 p.m. was the cutoff time. So if someone's pet had passed at home, the middle of the night, up until 11 p.m., we would provide that service for them. Now, after 11 p.m., we were able to find a service that even if we couldn't go out and retrieve their pet, they were able to talk to a company that gave them directions on what to do. So maybe
Mhm.
they could direct them to an emergency clinic, or they gave them instructions on how to preserve their pet until the next morning. So maybe, grab some ice bags, placing their pet in the coolest part of their home, whether that was a basement or a bathroom floor. That they had somebody that they could talk to that would give them some sort of answer or instruction, or
Right.
some guidance until
Mhm.
deceased pet care could talk with them that next morning.
I
So
think
that's
that's I think that's so important. If you can give instruction when people are at that critical point and they don't know what to do, they just need some instruction. And it sets that boundary that you talked about. You have to have some upfront boundaries. You can't be 24/7 and be all things to all people. So you have to have some boundaries. So if you're able to set that boundary and you're able to give instruction so that that pet parent feels taken care of and knows what to do until the time frame of when you're able to take that pet in or pick that pet up. That's the most important thing. So I think that's really good information. Would you have another question? How do you approach an employee who you think has burnout? So you're seeing the signs, you're seeing things happen with this employee, the negativity. This once happy, love to be here employees now turned into complaining, not happy, just has a negative attitude. How do you approach that employee whenever you know that you need to address the situation?
Yeah. No, it's a really good question. So I'll answer, kind of playing blended roles here, right? Because I'm a therapist. I have, the mental health background, but I also understand, as a owner, as a manager, trying to figure out, okay, how do I actually approach that situation now? So can I give an answer with both of those things in mind? So if it were me, right, with the knowledge that I have, I would approach them and ask for a conversation. Like, hey, can we meet today? Kind of towards the end of the workday, right? And my goal during that discussion would be trying to hear them out, like figure out, like, hey, like, how are you doing? They're not keen on opening up. Just you could always point out some things that you've noticed. I've noticed things feel a little bit off. You're not as just some things that I've noticed. Whether it's um, usually make a joke in the morning, right? And you haven't made a joke in a while, or usually always come in and talk to me, kind of check in with me throughout the day. I haven't seen you much, but you're staying curious as to,
Mhm.
hey, like what's going on, right?
You're
Um,
giving them that opportunity to kind of open up.
yeah,
So you're
right.
giving them an opportunity to let you know what's bothering them or what's starting to get to them.
Yeah, yeah, because
Good point.
most most people just want to feel heard, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
they probably have a lot kind of locked away, or built up, and they want to have the chance to be able to open up. But if you
Mhm.
don't let them have that chance, then it may continue to build up and turn into a not so good situation. So I
Right.
would say the first step is just giving them a space and an environment to be able to be heard, And then from there, you can figure out, okay, how can I help you now? What is it
Right.
that you need from me on our end? That's
Mhm.
within the appropriate boundaries and work setting.
Right. Yeah, no, it's such a good point. Um, I want to be mindful of our time frame, with making sure that we stay within our 1 hour. And those are the questions that we had. I think really, really great information just regarding what is burnout, what it looks like within yourself and within your employees, and how to stay in tune to that. And then helpful hints on things that you can, or helpful tools on things that you can do and incorporate into the workplace that can help with burnout. Now, I know in Boston, when we do our certification course, one of the things that we're going to talk about also is conflict and de escalation techniques. And that is really, really important, I feel like, in helping with burnout, because if you give yourself and your staff ways to help immediately de-escalate stress within the workplace, whenever you're dealing with a pet parent, they usually come at you from a couple of different angles. Either they're really upset and crying, or they're angry. And sometimes when you get that pet parent that's angry, they're angry because they're mad that they're in this situation. And so they want to take it out on you and or your employee, and they don't really know how to handle that. They're taking it personally. So de-escalation and stressful situations are just so very important. And to me, it adds to the burnout factor and everything that you're experiencing within the pet aftercare profession. So I'm really excited about the certification course that Austin will be presenting in Boston. We are going to make it is going to be an online course the next year. But if you can be with us in Boston, it's going to be so important to be there because there's nothing like one-to-one, one-on-one, peer-to-peer interaction. So I really appreciate everyone being here today. I appreciate, Austin, your time and education for us. And hopefully, this has been very beneficial. Please let me know. Again, reach out to us at the home office, other topics that you would love to see. And I look forward to seeing everyone in Boston. And Austin, again, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. As I said earlier, you're uniquely qualified to be able to give a talk such as this for our profession. Thanks,
Yeah, no,
everyone.
thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah. Thank you. Right. Thanks, everyone.